Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 17th live stream from the Misfit Gamer Studios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. Today we are going to go and continue with our look back on my old D&D Discord, one that I ran a very specific storyline campaign within my realm for, and we've been going over this a couple times. This is, I think, the fourth one that we're doing. We've already gone over, most of the standardized stuff that I built for this. Last time we went over the orc settlement information and, gave a little bit more information on the backstory, the setting, and some of the NPCs that they were, the players that were able to deal with and interact with. And then now, in this one, we are going to go through the shops and activities. That one is going to show off a lot of the things that I added in that I've mentioned before that allowed the players to game not necessarily with the entire party. So if someone wasn't there, they would be able to game without them, and it also gave them things to do by themselves. And some of these things even were able to be done without me. Because it was all automated through the bot system as well as just through the annotations and everything. So we're going to go over that. But first, I do want to cover a couple things. This is going to be probably a shorter stream. Definitely not going to be my normal, like 2.5, 3 hours. I'll be happy if I get to 2 hours or if I get through everything on Discord. Not feeling amazing today. But we are still here and we are still going to do this with as much energy as I can muster. But first things first, I made a promise and I also made a mistake on Monday that I have to correct part of that promise. So on Monday, I did another viewer submitted homebrew review, and we really liked it. Kage was here and we gave all of our insights to it, but I messed up and I did not give it any high points. I just completely was getting too involved in the conversation, and we were already pushing our normal stream limit because I usually have to take Kage home after this. So I wanted to go back on that. Since I've had a little bit more time to think about it, I think I'm going to break this answer into two parts because I feel like giving it a single score doesn't do it justice, because it's not just a specific item, it's a part of a set. So with that, I'm going to say that the item by itself, in terms of its modifications that I wanted to do to bring it over to high point, as well as just my personal interest and attachment to it, I would say that it's probably going to reach the lowest score so far that I've given. The shield by itself, once it's been granted, I say that by itself is about a 5 out of 10 high points. But that is balanced out with the set, because the idea and the combination of where this set is coming from being not only part of essentially a completionist or a completion gift, because you finally went to the extent of the storyline, and then these items are essentially designed to be the game plus that you've built for that next dungeon delve. And with that, the fact that it comes in a set, the fact that it's designed for the party, the fact that it has a trigger to even manifest in the first place, which is when they're about to die and already failing saving throws. And the fact that I haven't even read more than one of them, but just with our brief discussion, especially because you've broken it down into defensive, offensive, and then you have the buff one. Excuse me. That alone brings that entire set, and the idea that I have a feeling that what you're trying to do is make them play off each other, which is why I can see why a single one would receive such a low score, because, in and of itself, it is a cool concept, but alone it just doesn't drive home any major plot points or anything major for me in terms of a magical weapon, which is why I would make the changes that I would in terms of granting the AC where it comes off of the shield. But I digress. The fact that any individual one would make sense to not necessarily receive an impressive score overall, but the idea that they all come as a set, the idea that they would play off of each other, and slowly but surely the party would understand how each of them will build and how powerful they would become by the end of that dungeon delve, that and that game plus version that you've made with that's going over the Chinese zodiac. All of that, I would say, brings that entire set to a 9 out of 10. Hands down, that's one of the more impressive concepts that I've heard in terms of a set of magical items. I've heard a lot more that seem to be based off of more traditional D&D items, and bringing something that, even though you don't have it to where they have to be brought together to be like uber powerful, unless you do, because that would be also really cool. Because I also like things where it's like if you have an entire set of armor and each piece does something different, so you have to collect it all to be more powerful. Those are really good ideas. But having pieces come together is something that I'm always very fond of. It's something similar to what my deities will do. Like for instance, Zenith, the essentially the creator and ruler of High Point right now. His item, his divine item, is his staff. And essentially what that staff is he sends it out in pieces. Each piece has different variations. I'll have to get out the write-up on that and read that on stream at some point. But each piece has different abilities. I think I kind of essentially modeled it off of some of the lore on like I think it was the Spear of Destiny. So the idea was that each piece would just be out there as artifacts, and then as it got pieced together, more and more it could do more things. And then once you brought it all together, you essentially could summon. The idea is that once you bring it all together, it's supposed to be like a holy quest or just a major quest line, to where if you can find all the pieces, bring the staff together, you can do a ritual to summon Zenith, and then he'll give you one wish. And then there you go, you get a divine wish from Zenith himself. And then he thanks you for bringing him his staff again, and then he immediately shatters it and sends it across, and then starts it all over again, because that's the whole point, is to keep people driving and striving to be better. That's his whole deal. So that's why I really like this idea that you have a set piece that is going to be gifted if they succeed in their goal, which is also simultaneously the goal of the BBEG. So it's this weird, interesting, I don't want to call it anticlimactic, but a very interesting climax to that entire game. And then to have the final dungeon delve, I feel like just giving the players just a magical item wouldn't be enough. And the idea that not only do these trigger, but the charges that you have on them, and then just the aspect that this is going to continue to push the entire party. And you even mentioned before in your description, the whole idea is whoever survives. So as nice as all these items are going to be, it's also going to be about maximizing the economy of it, and maximizing, is it more important to bring yourself forward or to bring the team forward? And that's why I give that like a 9 out of 10, because it's something that I would do with it. It's something that I really want to encourage, and I think just shows a lot of interesting, ideas and a lot of interesting, creativity, synergy. Yes, perfect. It's such a good way of explaining that. And that's why, yeah. Like as a shield, I'm not a big shield user, and like I said, by itself, shield just doesn't seem to wow me too much. But I cannot wait to see all of the items together. And I know one thing that Kage and Kage is going to bring up with me again, because we keep wanting to make a Discord, like a specific Discord for this stream. Where one of these days we want to do things where we can like test like things out, so we can like build our own monsters, build our own players, and actually do like combat through the bot, and show you guys like what I used to do with it. And then that way we can test out different builds. And there is way, if Kage and I sit down and relearn some of the ways that we can program it in, we can add these special like magical items, and we can customize it to where they'll actually work with the in-game physics, to where they'll actually activate on command in-game. And those would be really awesome opportunities if we get to that point, and if we get your approval once we have like all of them, to do something like that. And one thing I really also want to do with this stream is eventually get I do want to have my own Discord. I mean, I have Discords, but they're not necessarily designed for the stream. I do want to get like a stream Discord eventually, and I think I might actually do like one of the channels I might try to dedicate and set up for trying to host like D&D sessions. I don't know how I would do that on stream because there's going to be a delay and there's going to be a lag. I think I would just try to set it up, somehow where I can host it in the Discord and just play with a couple people. But I really think that would also be a good opportunity for things like this. So like once we have the entire set, being able to program that in and actually run it in like a higher level combat and see how all of those items would fare in different situations. I think that would be really cool. And I know that Kage also wants to put some of the things that he's been thinking of into Discord as well to see how they play out. So hopefully we can start getting that set up in the next couple months. It's not even so much difficulty and time frame. I mean, it won't take very long. It's just drive and motivation because it's been probably nearly 2 years since, maybe over a year and a half at least, since I've touched that type of code. I think it's like a derivative of Python. So I just have to kind of go reteach myself that, and then we'll be able to figure out like how to add all those in. But there you go. The whole package, the whole deal, regardless of how many there are, the whole deal, 9 out of 10 high points. I am so looking forward to reading more of those. The only reason I'm not doing them today is I'm not feeling too good. I'm in a little bit of pain, and I just don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep the energy up to do this. So I just kind of want to dive into the Discord today, kind of try to get this finished up with the shops and activities, because I have been really interested in talking about that. It's kind of like the big part about the Discord and kind of like what I felt was a little bit more unique than I've seen in other Discords. But it makes sense to do it to last. It's kind of unfortunate. I'm not, superly excited, but I didn't have any other topics today. So hopefully you can hang on till Monday. Maybe you'll get a couple new ideas drafted up for us to read. But I'm sure that we will plow into those and give you as many ideas as we can come up with in the 3 hours that we're probably going to be streaming. So, hopefully that'll be all right, and it'll be a nice long weekend for everybody. All right. So we are going to dive in here back into the Discord. As I said before, we've already gone through all of like the greeting areas, how to create characters, the house rules that I have, the out of game stuff, the DM questions. I'm still going to probably do this either next Thursday or probably next Thursday. If I don't get this done today, then I'll do this next Thursday. But if I get all this done, I think the next thing I'll do is I am going to make a whole video where I just sit down and I just discuss, or I just scroll through all of the DM questions, because I would really think like that's a big thing that I like to talk about, is giving examples of how to work with players and how to deal with them. It's just a big thing that I like. I really like interactive DMs. I like DMs who are willing to take on that educational or that educator role, because it's not just the story that you control, but it's also the majority of the experience. So I really want to get into that in its own episode. And then last time, like I said, we went through the orc settlement, we went through the inventory, the NPCs, and then all of the things. Basically, all of these are just kind of the overall trackers that the players were able to do to keep track of while the back, their setting kind of developed as they gamed. So the more money they brought in, the more people they brought in, these factors would change, and they'd be able to keep track of it here, just so they could have more of an understanding, instead of just descriptors every now and again of saying, the town has now grown and there's more people here. This was more of a way for them to really see the work that they were putting in and have how it actually drastically changed and affected the world that they were living in. So that's what we went over last time. Let's see. Let's do the shops first. The shops are going to be a lot easier to go through. There are more activities. The activities are the best part too, so I think let's save that for last. And then Cosmic, the item I sent is basically just a buff version of the Room of Accumulative Knowledge, using 4d10s, using 4d10s, new effect, it triples or quads are rolled, and different set of AC. Okay, it's different AC. So the AC is a little bit differently calculated, and you use 4d10s, so you can have 4 different resistances or immunities or beyond. Gotcha. That's actually really cool. I'm really curious, because once we start hearing all of the items, I'm really curious to see the combinations that Kage are going to come up with, which is another reason why I want him in here, because I don't want to butcher it by going through the entire description and then giving him a half-assed version. As we go through these together, I know that we're going to have different ideas of how they work together. So that's another reason why I think doing the homebrew review on Mondays is really good. And then doing something, just, like more gameplay mechanics on Thursdays might be good, but we'll see. And I'm still doing the pop-up games too. I'm probably going to play more Shadows of Doubt, if not tomorrow night, Saturday for sure. And I'll probably just be streaming most of the day playing that game because I played it a little bit more and I'm really excited to get back to it. So let's go into the shops. So the way that I wanted this to happen, it was just an easier way for everyone to reference what was available to purchase. And then it was also a way for, excuse me one second. Let's see here. So, the way that I wanted the general store, the shops to go is it was a place to reference what could be purchased, what the easier prices were. And it was also a place to do extra RP with specific NPCs. And it was also a place to separate out, like, the activities in this were a little bit different because this was going to be more specified to the actual equipment, whereas the activities are more specific to the character development and the character activities. So, so we'll go into that. Now, it's been a while. I know one of these, I think the general store may have been a constant work in progress because I don't remember if I got all of the pricing right ever. But yeah, so going through the general store. So when you come to the general store, started out, you can browse each category for a list of available items. So this right here was basically just a quick way for anybody, if they had questions on what was available, because with this, they would go to different places and we would game those out with different shops and different specialty items. But while they were in their own settlement, there wasn't really a reason to not have them have easy access because, again, they could just walk in and just, check out what's there. So I gave them all of the the references that I felt comfortable. Basically, anything from any of these links would give them information on what the settlement would have access to, and just quick links to things like tools and everything. So if they wanted something specific, they didn't have to ask me where they could find information on it. They'd just be able to go out and find it themselves. And then we talked about food. So if they wanted to buy food, this was their ration breakdown. So it was 5 silver a day, it was 25 a week, or it was 125 a month. I honestly don't remember where that calculation came from. That might have just been me doing some quick math, or I might have gotten that from one of the books. I honestly don't remember where a lot of the specifics came from. So talking more about the bot as well. So these were all things that were available to be purchased from the general store. So you had all the different backpacks. And what I really liked about this bot is you could do things like this, where I made the general store. Basically, I told the bot the general store was a person or like a character. And once you have a character, you can give them things, and then you can basically say, hey, display the things that I have. So the general store, I basically put it into the bot that it had an inventory, and in that inventory, I put all of this stuff. So this was a really nice way for, again, people to come in and say, hey, I'm interested in, getting like a pack, one of the backpacks, or if they were doing even a character build and they wanted to know what was in a specific pack, this was also an easy reference for them to find out what was going to automatically come into it. Let's see. So packs. So this was all the inventory in the pack, and then this was the price per pack. I'm pretty sure that these were all going to be from the book. This is probably going to be from 5e reference points. So one of those links up above is where most of these prices were probably coming from. But yeah, your price for the packs, and then what is in each pack, depending upon, your needs and your character build. And then you had specialty items. So we had common. I guess what I had decided that basically everything in here was considered 100 gold because these are specialty items. I'm probably sure I got this again off one of the lists up above. There was probably a few things that I specifically wanted to point out. And then I also know that some of these items I would add in over time as they gamed, if they had found things and didn't want to keep them for the party. So when they donated them to the settlement, they would come into here. And part and partial is just basically yes, it was kind of a way to give them an opportunity to get it again if they didn't want to have it right now, whether or not I thought it was useful. But it was also a way for me to keep track, because sometimes in the future, if I needed an NPC to do something, things that they had gathered that they didn't want to use would then help that NPC. So keeping them in here was also a list of things that I could remember to use. So it actually worked out. And I would actually do that. I would actually have NPCs come in here and take things out of inventory for their own purposes. And then that would end up, may or may not benefit the players later. Let's see here. So we have a Candle of the Deep, Clockwork Amulet. I'm pretty sure all of these are pretty low-level magical items. Candle of the Deep, I'm pretty sure, is just like a light source that doesn't go out. I don't remember what Candle of the Deep was. I am looking it up right now because the stream... Oh, yeah, there we go. The stream did pick it up. Oh, I can't see it. I can't see it. Candle of the Deep. The flame of this candle is not extinguished when immersed in water. It gives off light and heat like a normal candle. Okay, so I was right. Okay. Yeah, so all pretty low-level stuff. Orb of Direction, Orb of Time, Pull of Angling, Rope of Mending. Yeah, so pretty low-level stuff. Nothing that I'm, would be really worried about, giving them for 100 gold. It was more situational, things that would be beneficial in, certain situations that they might find them in, themselves in. And then we have Uncommon. So right off the bat, I'm thinking that, I know it's uncommon, but 500 gold for a bag of holding seems pretty cheap. Then again, they didn't really earn gold very fast in this particular campaign. Gold wasn't that much of a generation, but 500, I think. I'm pretty sure that's pretty low on the scale. I don't remember how much that is. I wonder, do I even remember... Do I remember how to, do any of, let's see if I can remember how to pull this up. Item. What do we want to look up? Ha! So, I still remember how to use this app. So, this is one of those things that I really, really enjoyed about this bot, is things like this. We're in the middle of a game, and someone's like, oh, I want to know about something specific. So, boom. Here we go. It is a wondrous item. It is uncommon. It has all the descriptions, but it doesn't specifically give me a cost in this particular, thing. But it does take me... that link does send me right here. So I do go right to D&D Beyond, which is fantastic. And then I get to go in here. It does not tell me how much it how much it costs. It says that I found on the page. I don't know if I can find it on page 114. Okay, it's in the DMG. No one's talking about price, which it may just not be. This may not have a price. So basic rules page. So yeah, I don't know how much a normal magical which is a bag of holding 5e. Oh, wow. Okay. So, someone said 500 at one point, 400 or 1d. Oh, okay. 1d6, 100. That makes more sense. 500 pounds, cubic feet, 50, blah, blah, blah. 1,000 GP. Okay. Okay. Someone's going, 10,000. Okay. So, yeah. So, maybe 500. I think at the time it made more sense because of how little they were making in general in terms of gold generation. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of one of those kind of debatable things of how important and how rare do you think a bag of holding should be, and then therefore how much expense should it have. It says 4,000 GP, but often range from 1 to 500. Okay. And yeah, so that's, I wonder where that happened. I mean, I always think that a bag of holding is like, depending upon the players, it can either just be a catch-all and just kind of like an easy out in some situations, and then other times it can be just a really good useful item that is used strategically. So I guess that's just kind of up to the DM to decide how hard and how late in the game do you want this item to become available to your players. Drift Globe was really interesting. I'm pretty sure Drift Globe was the light orb that you could throw above you and it would just follow you and just provide you a light source around you. Dust of Dryness, Dust of Sneezing, Oil of Slipperiness, which is interesting that these are more than some of those guys. But again, I'm sure that made sense because they are uncommon items. Potion of Resistance, Potion of Growth. Oh yeah, so all of these were definitely when they wanted to go dungeon delving, and they would find, because the idea would be that they could go through the dungeons one layer at a time and then leave if they wanted, and then just come back to that layer. So these would be, opportunities for them to run into something that they couldn't handle, come back, stock up specifically with what they needed, and then go back out. Which, standard affair for D&D, but again, a place that they could come do it, and they didn't even need me here, because all they had to do was go in here, do the little RP, or basically just type out what they wanted, and then do the command to change out their money, and then boom, I didn't even have to be online for all of that. They knew what the price was, they knew what was available, they knew how to take the money out of their own inventory, and all I had to do was come in and check all the numbers, and bada bing, bada boom. And since everything else is tracked, they can't hide adding it into their inventory from me, so I can just track where everything came from. Pretty easy. And then I did add this guy at one point. Behind the glass counter of the general store lies a unique glass case, unusually polished, as it's almost impossible to tell where on edge ends and the other begins. Inside lands a single deck of cards cradled in a handmade wooden box. I did add the deck of many. I just thought it was a really fun thing, and once we got it to work and learned how to make it work with the bot, it was just going to be a lot of fun. So we did add the deck of many as part of like a kind of an RP driver and giving people just something to do and have fun with. And then this is where Truvius is. He is our general store owner, and you can also find the appraiser here as well. And then this is where we break down how he appraises things. So he can identify an artifact. So any artifact that is unknown or mysterious to the players, when they find it, they can bring it here. And just for 10 gold, he'll let them know what it is. So if they find a dagger, but it obviously seems to be more than normal, 10 gold. And maybe he'll tell them if it's from a certain house of a certain clan. If it's that kind of a dagger, he could tell them if it's a named dagger. So things like that is, just basic. And then if it's a rare artifact, it would cost 100. And then so basically any standard artifact 10. If it's a rare artifact or something more powerful, it would be 100. And then we talked about last episode, if they got let's say a valuable gem and they wanted to know how much the gem was worth, it is 10% of the item's value. So once he appraises it, so basically they give him the gem, he appraises it, and he'll create a letter of authenticity, and then in order to take that letter, they have to give 10% of its worth. And then at this point, they have a gem and a letter that basically allows them to sell that gem at that price anywhere. So it's not just a situation where they can turn around and sell it to him for 10%, because he has to first do his process. So yes, you do lose 10% of the gem's worth, but if you want to travel with gems and not money, this is the way to do it. And then that letter is what guarantees that you can get it elsewhere. So a little thing that we just wanted to add. And then if it's a magical item and they want it identified, it'll cost 100 gold outright. And then scroll cost. So spells at half cost. So I think based on the build that I had for this NPC, he could also do, I think he could he create spells, or I don't know why I added spells here, spells or scrolls specifically. I don't know if it was just in general because it was the general store and we didn't really have a magical item store, so it probably just fell into general store because it's kind of just everything. I think you'd think it would be coming into the weapons shop, but I don't know if it was tied to him or not. That makes me wonder, because that looking back on it, this doesn't seem to fit into the general story. It would either be in the weapon shop or it might be tied to him. So, but this was just a breakdown of if they wanted a scroll, this is how much it would cost based on the level. And I think that looks pretty standard. I don't see really much wrong with that. Yeah, I mean, at that level, yeah, based on what level you would be at in order to cast most of these, it seems fair that's, especially if you were lower level, it's going to cost you a lot more to be able to have, that much power to throw around. And then, of course, people can, sit here and RP. So this is just a little bit of an example of just, RPing with people. So, it came in to talk to the appraiser. Venlaw was like by far the biggest RPer. They were just always on. So Kage just always loves to just be talking and doing things. And then mystery key. Oh yeah, so the mystery key, I think that was basically kind of like a skeleton key concept where you buy a mystery key and then it'll open up basically one door, period. So I think I bought this for a dungeon delve just to make sure that we could open up any chest or anything in case we didn't have any, or couldn't, pick the locks or anything. Then we got a healer's kit, more RP. And then here's a good example. So someone comes in, purchases 3 nets for 1 gold each, 3 GP total. And then in the other, I can go check, I think it was in-game, I would go check roles and commands, and then I can pair that up with him removing 3 GP from his inventory. And then, of course, again, so I don't have to even be online at this point. So Venla wants to come in, and this is everything they wanted to buy. They give me the total. I don't have to do anything. It's all just done by that. I'm gonna miss that cloak. Oh, the cloak of many fashions. That was really fun. And again, I love RP aspects because something like this, it's like I'm gonna miss that cloak. Oh, was it yours? Yes, once upon a time. It's more of a memory these days, but this is one of those things that I like to do with with NPCs is just you don't have to. I'm not necessarily a fan of the introduction of NPCs per se in terms of like, oh, he's going to tell you his life story suddenly. But little things like this I like to add in because then it's up to the player to be intrigued, right? It's something small as just you're going to buy all of this stuff. And as I could just imagine, adding that little bit of flair to that conversation of, oh, I'm going to miss that item. And then again, that's it. And the player can just take it or leave it. And in this particular case, asking that question of, oh, it's just a distant memory. Glad it'll find a good home. It serves where well, holds many secrets yet to be discovered. And then slight daydreaming. Again, just giving that depth of character, but it's not just for show because you can continue to push that storyline. There is history there. And that's just the way that I like to add in those rich details without giving a giant diatribe every time you meet a new character. Because again, I feel like that's exactly how it would be more naturally learned is over time you hear those things and you're more intrigued to actually want to know more about it. And then more RP between everybody. Let's see. Okay. And then this is a situation where we did find an artifact, and we wanted to know what it was, so they were able to bring it into the appraiser, and this is how that would end up. So they paid for it, and then they were able to get the actual description, which we saw in the party log. And I think it was it was in the party log that they actually had the aspect, and then more RP. More RP, more purchasing, and then so they found art objects in like a town, and they didn't want them, but they were able to bring them back, so they sold them. And hey, based on the books, that's how much they were. So the settlement bought them, and the party gained 300,000 GP. I don't know if that was really necessary to allow them to do that, but again, this was more kind of for fun and kind of for Easter egg stuff. So we rolled with it. But it did help the party out. So that was really fun. And this is great. So this is another good example of what you can do here. So Darnus Darnus doing a little bit of RT, comes into the shop with a particular something in mind. Not sure where he might be able to find it, but figures Truvis' shop would be a great place to start. Hey Truvis, good morning. I'm in the market for something special and wasn't quite sure where I might be able to find it. Figured you'd be the best place to check first. And I'm looking for a ring of spell sorting and an amulet of health. Would you happen to know where I can find something like that? So I like this, again, because it wasn't necessarily something that was available. I don't know if this was available in one of the lists, or if he found this in a different source, and this is his way in-game of asking if he can find it outside of the list. But it also could have been something that was on one of the links that I sent him, and this is his way of bringing it up without it just being on the wall. Again, not everyone's going to have players that go that extra little bit, but this was really a great opportunity because it gives me the time to go research these, figure out if it is going to be something that's in one of the lists I've provided, or if it's not, I can figure out whether or not it would be worth being able to give to them and not be too game breaking or just not be too disruptive to the current progress. And then, a little bit more RP because I think I realized how powerful that was. Yeah, it took me, a little while to respond, so 20 minutes, which is great. That's another good thing about doing this is because most of this was done through text. You could just type up what you needed to, and then someone would get back to you, and then you could just pick it up later. And then, basically just saying how rare it is and how much it would be hard. But he might be able to get his hands on the amulet. So little things like that, being able to say, hey, in the future, we can get certain things moving forward. And we had some good opportunity to do pin messages, which is also nice again. So because we're so far down with all of this RP in the pin messages, you can always come back and see quick shots of like what's actually in the shops. Forgot to mention that before because I completely forgot that we did that. But I saw this pin message and I'm like, oh hey, that's a thing that we did. So again, we have some more purchasing, and it just comes down to. I know we purged these a lot, so I know it doesn't seem like there was a lot of chit chat, but I think every 2 or 3 months we had so much chat when we were really doing this heavily that I would end up going and I would actually purge a lot of the prior chat just because we needed to have more space and not be scrolling forever when we needed to reference things. We only got to level 4 in this particular case. With these particulars, but we did do a lot of. There was just so much RP to scroll through, so many things that I had to just get rid of because I couldn't I couldn't find anything with how much I had to scroll. So I basically there was at one point I just basically told all the players if there's anything important, mark it or save it for yourself, because I gave them 2 weeks. Then I said I'm basically purging several of these channels because they were just getting too big with all of the fluff. Because I had to go to bed and they would all stay up RPing all night, and then I would wake up to just novels. And then I'm like, I don't want to scroll through this the next time. I need to remember what y'all said. So either pin it and it won't get deleted, or save it in your own notes because I can't do this anymore. But so that was the general store. Pretty straightforward. Weapon shop is going to be pretty similar. So we have the link for where the weapons go. I didn't really get very far because, again, everyone kind of had their starting weapons and we didn't really change out at all. So this one really didn't get used very much. And then we did have some special notes. We had walloping ammo, base item, arrows, blowgun, crossbow bolts, energy cell, walloping energy cell, resistance bullet. So those are for slings and things like that. A little picture of the shop. I just kind of really like this picture. Just kind of showed off just what it would be like to just hang out with, a bunch of things for, again, a settlement, not so much like a store. And then you have Gerald, and then more RP. So again, we didn't really use this one, again, because no one ever really swapped out their weapons. Everyone was really happy with what they started with, which is, I don't know. I'm really curious to hear more about people, different experiences, because I've had my own various experiences with gaming in terms of I've had gaming sessions early on where it was keep your main weapons until you can find a more powerful version of that weapon. Then later we went to sessions where you just swapped out weapons based on the need or the situation or just because you felt like it. And then I've been in games where it's like, do everything you can to keep your starter weapon because it's like personal. And that's where, I think Kage and I both really enjoy giving out weapons that upgrade with the player in terms of magical weapons, because then people don't have to bother swapping things out and being bothered with that. But I am really interested to know what what the average experience is for players. Do you swap out weapons often? Do you just look for the magical version of your weapon before you swap it out? Or are you actually changing up the type of weapon altogether? Because I know that, like, with most of the games that I DM for, most people try to hold on to it. It's more of like, because their character was so specifically designed for that weapon, and because it was part of the backstory, it's like they don't want to give it up unless like a +2 comes along, and then they're like, okay, I can get this up. Armor Shop, I think, is going to be pretty as lackluster. Oh no, actually, Armor Shop's a little bit more. So once again, we always start with the link where everyone can go and verify what they want. And then we have a specialty selection. So we have a couple more items that we actually were able to get through, and a few things that I had added in during the very beginning. Just to kind of give them things to reach for and to kind of like hope for in the future, price wise. Even though they, in one dungeon delve, they obviously earned like 30,000 coins, so they could basically almost buy all these armors at this point. But different types of armor, varying ratings, varying prices, and then just being able to have magical items be able to be purchased that quickly. I just really liked it. I thought it was really nice. Again, this wasn't supposed to be super like slow paced, and it wasn't supposed to be super like hardcore on the rules. This was definitely a much more lighthearted campaign. So I really wanted everyone to just not have to feel like they had to wait too long for things and feel the restraints. But looking back on it, I do see that I see it was very, very lenient on a lot of things. Another great picture for an armor shop. I think that was really nice. I mean, more weapons than armor even in this picture, but hey, what are you gonna do? I was working with what I had. This was where Tesna works. Everyone was all about Tesna. Everyone, I think everybody had made a comment about Tesna and just like, I picked very good for this picture, because this was the NPC everybody was all about for a while. Not a whole lot of RP on the aspect of armor though, but she was. Let's see, what is this going on here? Someone came in after they got their titles, so someone became a scout, and walking you through the various types of shield you have access to. Okay, so someone wanted to look into shield fighting, and then basically this was a way to show off. Basically, this was my way of explaining like the different types of shield types basically in game. So she wanted to basically run a class and say, oh, let me tell you about shields. And then this is essentially what they learn. So you have all your non-magical shield types, your gauntlet, how much it costs, the class, your armor, the armor increase, the damage it can do, and then a small description. So little things like this is another good reason why I like gaming in Discord, or at least why I did, is because you can do these little, you can type normally, but then you can just do a little bit of formatting to your text with a few characters and then block it out like this and just really make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner to read through. So it's just one thing that I really did enjoy about doing this in Discord. And then all of these were just, completely just different shields, and basically gave him a rundown of all the shields that they could do. And then I think he ended up going with Buckler. Let's see here. And then the final one, we have the Crafter. So the Crafter is a resource you can use to create personalized, unique, or otherwise unlisted items you cannot craft yourself. Describe the item along with effects, abilities, materials, designs, and purpose. And Halbert will discuss a price and time frame for the time to be made. So essentially, this was, if you can't buy it through the normal means, and it's not something that you would be able to in-game craft, like let's say, it's not, you can't use just someone's, tool belt or, different like tool bag for anything like an herbalist kit or, anything like that. Or for whatever reason, you can't get the feat for it. So the idea was, if it can't normally be gotten, but you had an idea for something, this is where you would come. And the idea was, you pitch the idea to me. I'll figure out, A, is it even doable for, various reasons. And if it is doable, I'll set difficulty levels. And essentially what it would be is, it would either be a set price, depending on how easy I feel like it would be to get those items for the particular NPC. Other times it would be an opportunity to say, hey, it's going to be this price because I got to go do all this stuff. But if you bring this stuff to me, I'll cut the price down because you're cutting out my labor, right? Like if you bring me the ingredients that are rare, I can actually do this for cheaper. So that was kind of the idea, is it was a way for characters or the players to come up with their own stuff, and give them an opportunity to, again, continue RP, continue gameplay, and provide opportunities that normally wouldn't have been provided through the game, through the campaign and the storyline, such as being able to go and get a particular rare, ingredient that would grant them a new magical item, or something that, again, they would not normally be able to possess, but they created themselves. So this was really the crafter. This was a place where they were able to make their own items, and I always like adding that as an option for players to be able to do. I think it really empowers players to think creatively about their builds and about where they want to go with it. And so Darness, of course, had a really interesting idea. So he wanted to come here because it wasn't something he could normally purchase. So let's see what his idea was. So what is he looking for? A shield that he can wield, or otherwise get the protection from, while still leaving his hands free for spell casting. So with the spell casting, obviously he needed his symmetrical ability, so he can't hold something, otherwise he'd lose his ability to do his symmetrical options for his spells. And then while training with Dante, Darnus realized that he has to make the choice between using a shield and a melee weapon, so, doing that while still being able to cast in combat. He has to make a choice of using a shield and melee weapon while still being used. He has read about shields with the ability to protect on their own, and is interested in seeing if something like that might be possible. And he's referencing animate shields. So he's saying that he's heard legends, or he's heard rumors that there are shields that can protect the wielder, essentially through its own means. And he's giving me the reference point of, this is essentially what I kind of want to, mock it off of, or at least inspired by. Which I always appreciate. If you can give me, as a DM, if you can give me what you're inspiring it off of, it makes it so much easier for us to look at that and then take that and modify it to what makes more sense for us. So personal caveats. So it's not just animate shield. Otherwise, he could just go find that. So he's kind of gearing towards the animate shield, but essentially his personal caveats is that he's personally weak, so he needs something that can actually wield so that he can actually wield as a regular shield. But it cannot have any strength or dexterity requirements. So it has to be lightweight, it has to be small, has to be something that his character can handle, but also do that as extra things. And it cannot hinder him underwater, because he can breathe underwater, because his character is all about water. One of his big things was, obviously, he doesn't want to sink, he doesn't want to move slower. And then he gives me this small breakdown of what Animate Shield was based off of the DMG 151, page 151. Armor/shield, very rare, requires attunement. While holding this shield, you can speak a command word as a bonus action to cause it to animate. The shield leaps into the air and hovers in your space to protect you as if you were wielding it, leaving you hands free. The shield remains animated for 1 minute until you use a bonus action to end its effects, or until you are incapacitated or die. At which point the shield falls to the ground or into your hand if you have one free. Open to Hilbert suggestions for materials and design, although Darnus does have a preference to water-ocean themes. So obviously, great way to present that item. Tells me exactly what he wants, what he's referencing in terms of its inspiration, and he gives me a few caveats that he wants to specifically notate so we cater it specifically to his character. And that's exactly what this is for. He could have gone out and found a shield, he could have gone out and found that spell, but it doesn't specifically cater to his needs, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here. And then this is great. So again, I love when everyone kind of sticks to a certain kind of format. So you kind of can tell when people are talking in-game and out-of-game with brackets versus when they're actually speaking, which I know for me, I like to do with italicized. That kind of indicates more dialogue. It's just easier on the eyes or it's more obvious on the eyes to identify. But I do like when the players bracket it, because it does pull me into the right direction of how the comment's being typed. And then while I love this item, and I think it would be extremely cool, the water caster feat would also solve this problem rather simply. Food for thought, or the warcaster feat. And that is good too. This is great. This is another reason why I really like having this open to all of the players, because while he comes in, he could have said this in game. He could have said Venla walks by and sees, Darnas ordering this thing inside. He walks in, hears the order, and says, hey. But, I also like this, just the out of game, like, hey, man, I love this idea you're trying to make. That's really cool. But have you thought of Warcaster? Because at that point, you can hold any shield you want and then just cast through it. Because that's what Warcaster does. It allows you to cast through, I think, the items that you're holding. And then, but again, not necessarily anything that I want to specifically lean towards, because I want to address each player, but that's up to Darnas to figure out if he wanted to go that route as well. But continue with the RP, it's like, hey, that's quite an order. He ponders, yes, I believe I can come up with something. Let's see how much of an investment you're interested in putting into the shield. Plan to have the shield for a very long time. He's open to sizable investment if it means longevity. They found variable treasure, blah, blah, blah. So for something like that, you describe the range would be 20 to 50,000. So, just kind of ranging based on what he wants. Something that I think that was based on the range of the spell, the actual animate shield. Depending on how much of an investment we're talking about. Darn, his heart drops a bit when he hears that. And he's like, yeah, just give me the 50,000. Like, give me the best. And then some of the tools might be difficult, may increase the cost. And then blah, blah, blah. So I think it was just more of we continued to talk about this, but it wasn't going to be a right away thing. I don't remember if we ended up continuing with that or not. I don't remember if this happened before or after a purge of text, because those were always ineffective. I tried to use bots for that and they never worked 100%. But that is a good example of what this was for, is if you wanted to come in and build something, or even just recreate something, but modify it to make your character, make it work for your character a little bit better. That's where this was kind of going for, and that's kind of why I liked it, because you had the armor shop, the weapon shop, you had a general store, so basically you had all your normal items, and then you had a place to come and just try to find something or create something on your own. All right, and now we are getting to one of my favorite parts, my absolute, where all the fun, I think, of making this Discord, not where all the fun of the gameplay happened. This is where the fun of the making the Discord was for me, because this is where I got to really learn the programming for this bot, and the the programming behind it, that modified, or the derivative or whatever of Python. And it was just really fun to create these, because again, it brought me into a different type of D&D, where this was trying to create something where it was interactive without me. It was something that the players could do on their own whenever they wanted, with or without each other. And I do like doing that with things like one-on-ones, with, in-game side tangents. But it's a lot different when it was online and I didn't have to be there for it. So we're going to jump into this. I'm going to be right back. I am almost out of water, and I could definitely keep my throat going, because I do want to get through all of these. We're only an hour in. I'm going to try to push it another hour. I'm doing all right. But bear with me. Give me just a few minutes so I can go replenish, and then we are going to dive into what I think is the most fun aspect of the build of this server. Again, not the most fun aspect of playing it, but this is really where I had the most fun conceptualizing this new way of playing. So join me with that. I will be right back. All right, and we are back. Got myself a fresh drink. And let us get going. So, I think what we're going to do is jumping into activities. I'm going to start at the bottom of the list because it's designed this way because this was just the tracker. But we are going to talk about development time first. That's really what set all of this up. This development time is really what set in motion this idea to have these activities. And it was the first thing I made in order to decide, how am I going to structure their ability to do these things? How am I going to get people to understand, and how am I going to get them to track doing these like side tangent options that don't involve the whole party? Excuse me. So let's get into it. So development time. This was the new concept that I was working with, that I really wanted to like see and play around with. Developing your character can be one of the most rewarding aspects of character creation, and here I've designed a few ways you can improve and develop your character beyond standard leveling up adjustments. So again, that's exactly what this was for. It was a way for people to not just RP and play D&D, but it was a way for them to develop their character that wasn't just thinking of things and creating, like not just evolving the personality. This was giving them real tangible things that help develop the character. After successful gaming sessions and or in-game events, each character will be given development time, which will be tracked below. This time may be spent in any of the resource and activity locations as long as you have the available time and gold to spend. So this was kind of a combination of in-game, like because you're part of the settlement, you have a job and everything. So this is kind of like your own personal time. So part of it was like not having to work, like literal days off. So it was kind of RP-ish like that, but it was also to indicate like how much time you personally had and how much time you were willing to give in. So it's not just specifically like, 6 days and 3 weeks doesn't mean you had almost a month of time to take off and not do anything in the settlement. It's just more of a, you're expected to do so much. You're given time, you're given days, you're given partial days. So these are the accumulated amounts of time that you have to, at the end of your shifts, in between things that you're doing, when you're not, on an adventure. These are the things that are happening in the background, and that's the idea of time. So to track your development time, please write the message in chat with the information below. Name, your number of days / your number of weeks. When updating, please use the edit function and don't just create a new message. That way it just keeps it just like this, so everybody can just say, click edit and then update. So it was broken down into days and weeks because things sometimes took a different amount of time. So this is 6 days and 3 weeks. So this is 1 day shy of, a month. This is 1 day and 1 week, 5 days and 5 weeks. So this is an accumulative amount. And basically, again, this was rewarded after, when they got XP, when they got gold, or when certain things happened, they were awarded this stuff. And this was where they could just spend it on all of these activities, however they wanted to. So let's start with the mass hall. Again, I think I brought this up on like either last stream or something. I think it was either last stream or the stream before, but I was talking about the locations. But the mass hall is not a typo. I really actually meant it to be that way because the idea was that the mass hall is not only the mess hall, like where, the local place where everyone eats, but it's also the town hall. It's also where everybody masses to just kind of get information, chit chat. It's where the higher ups usually hang out because it's also like the main, like tavernish area. So yeah, it's the mass hall. Made a lot of sense at the time. And then let's jump to the very beginning. So the mass hall, unlike the rest of these activities, the mass hall was the most like RP heavy idea about it, because again, you're going to see here it has a lot more options than the rest of them, but that's just because it was supposed to be an easy hub, and it was to get around the idea of, hey, I'm going to go over here, now I'm going to go over here, now I'm going to go over here. It was just kind of an idea that, hey, a lot of the stuff we can just compile into this one area, and it did make sense for the lore purposes. So to give an idea, this is what the place looked like. So you just basically came in, it was always just full of people. All the floors were always just stacked with people just everywhere. And I really loved this picture. It was just such a cool concept, especially with the big barrels on the wall. I just thought that was awesome, and the giant barrel in the middle. So the Mass Hall is the heart and soul of the settlement. Here is where the public cafeteria and main food storage is located. It is also the main gathering place for all special events and formal meetings, and is even considered the unofficial town hall, because they don't really have an actual town hall unless you consider like the chieftain's area. But the idea is that this is essentially where they just hold everything. There are many opportunities here. Browse the options below. So there's the bulletin board. And this is kind of your standard fare for D&D. The bulletin board is a place where anyone and everyone who needs something done can't do themselves post their problems. Roll a 1d100 for random or look for specific opportunities. So what that meant was you can roll a d100, and based on that, you would pick or you would get selected a random task, a random job that was in the settlement, or look for specific opportunities. So if everyone was just like, hey, I really want to. Like, if there was a rogue and they're like, man, we never get to, like, steal. Like, I really want to, like, theft job. They could say, is there something on the bulletin board for that? And then I can craft something real quick for them to go do. And again, it was just to make them always have something they wanted to do if it wasn't developing the campaign. And this is one of those options where if I had 2 players I think at the time we had 7 on here, if only 2 players were online, and they were all in the settlement, it was like, hey, what do you want to do? I don't know. Let's go. I want to game. I want to fight. I could put them on the bulletin board. Just say, hey, go to the bulletin board, see what's up, and then I could craft something real quick that they can go do in a little side mission that would allow them to advance. And I didn't stop people from advancing. If you kept gaming and everyone didn't, now I wouldn't let you get to level 10 while everyone's still level 3. That it wouldn't make any sense, especially timeline wise. But just to get ahead, if you were level 5 and everyone else was level 4, that's okay. You did more. But the bulletin board was just kind of essentially just that, a random quest generator / ability to go do something you really want to do quest line wise, or just, activity wise, if you were bored. And it was also a place, I didn't write it in here, but it's also a place because it specifically says anyone and everyone. That also meant the party. So another really cool concept I wanted is that if the party wanted to have something done, they could post it, and then I would do a percentile roll to see how likely it would be that another NPC would pick up that job, and then do some rolls to see if they would succeed. So the party could actually go and have things done for them. So that was another option for that as well. And then with local lore, being the hotspot for the entire settlement, you can always be sure to overhear random and interesting facts about the local area that the settlement has taken up residence in. So the idea is that you have these scouts that go out and they're finding all of these, other local settlements and towns and villages, and then the scouts and the raiders go out, or after the scouts go out, the raiders go out, and they go and, sometimes they'll infiltrate, sometimes they'll partner up and do some trade, sometimes they'll just go and raid them outright. And the idea is that all, these people are just coming in and out and talking about what they found. So the idea is that you can roll an investigation or a perception check while you're in here, and those checks would give you potential informations and leads. Again, kind of like the bulletin board, but a different flavor. So when it comes to the bulletin board, those would be things that would be more localized inside the settlement. It could also even be things that are for people in the settlement, whereas local lore would give you information that aren't things that people want, but places and things that are out there. Maybe you would find a dire animal. Maybe someone would mention a dire animal, or they would find a small settlement that you could go raid, or maybe they heard of a traveling merchant that you can go try to find, and then there would be probably an encounter if you try to do that. But that's the idea, is you wouldn't find the same thing under local lore that you will in the bulletin board. Those are going to be completely separate categories of things you can do, and it's no different than just having a generalized, random quest generator. But this, again, I feel is more intuitive, as well as it's more the word is escaping me. It's more true to the atmosphere. I feel that this resonates more with what the characters and players should be doing, instead of just saying, hey, I want to do something random. This is them choosing what type of random they want, what category of random. So the council. The council. It is often that the higher ranks are seen wandering around the mass hall. Providing good conversation, information, and assistance is a good way to get on their good side. So essentially, this was a place where a lot of the, you can get in good with some of the bigger higher ups. If you can come in, dialogue, RP with them, give them information that, they otherwise may not have. And even if just listening in and seeing what you can do for them are all ways that you could get on their good side. And of course, having, strong higher up NPCs like you is always a benefit to players. So we went over the NPCs before, but the three main ones that you're going to see here, you're going to have Elder Vorzas, the war chief and head of the council, Elder Gilcrest, which is the raid master, the main raid contact, and Elder Nukia, which is the scout master and the main scout contact. So once all the players got their ranks and their titles, or not their titles, but their ranks, so some of them became scouts, some of them became raiders, this is where they would go and talk to basically their commander, and either be able to get missions and do all of that stuff. I mean, they had other ways of doing it, but this is just a place where they can get in good and kind of shine with the particular person that ran their group. And then, of course, Elder Vorzash was just one of my more favorite characters to play. He was, or at least type out. He was really fun. And yeah, he was just always there to just kind of just give commentary. And then mercs. So wannabe raiders itching to prove themselves in any way possible to gain the right to join the raiding parties. So these are, others in the settlement that haven't quite earned the right or earned, the offer to become raiders. So they're essentially just trying to wait, and they're there to do things that will gain someone's attention and be like, hey, do you want to be a raider? So not always the brightest bunch, but are a good source of muscle and hand of a pinch. You make a hire a Berk or become mercs. So similar to the bulletin board, this is one of those things where if they're dungeon delving and they got to the final area and they just didn't want to handle it themselves, or they thought it was too difficult, this was just a place they can go grab some stuff. Or again, if they just wanted to do straight combat, but they didn't want to have like they just like, look, I just want to fight. They can come in here and be like, hey, does anyone need a muscle for hire? I don't care your story. I just tell me who to punch. And again, it's that idea of you could have just done that with, oh, hey, what do you guys want to do today? We know what's the open quest. You just want to go fight, whatever. But in this way, again, it allows the player to make that choice that's in line with how their character would be. So if they just don't want to bother, like, let me just do a merc mission. Like, I want to be a merc. Like let me be hired as one. That's all they have to tell me. That means you don't care. You don't need to know anything. You just, boom. Someone says, hey, follow me over here and protect me if they fight back. And that's all it's like simple, easy. And that's all I had at that point. I did have more ideas that I was brewing up, but never got to type them out. But I really like that. I really like the idea that they can come here and they have all of these multitude of ways to generate essentially on the spot side quests, so they didn't have to just constantly push the campaign. And this was for the entire party or one person or any combination. This was just an idea for the party. If they just came in and were like, hey, the story's been cool, but we're just kind of we just kind of want to hold off on that because we don't want to die yet, or we're just not ready. They could just come do something like this, and it was just more fun for them because they still get to play, they still get to do all the things. But usually when you're playing the campaign, especially if you're trying to progress it to the next major plot point or the next major benchmark, it's usually pretty difficult. You're usually stretching your materials and your items thin, and the fights are becoming a little bit more stressful. So a lot of people just want something that's like, hey, I just want something easy to do today, and this was the way to do that and keep it fresh and interesting while also maintaining that in-game feel. Maintaining that consistency of what the game's trying to provide, which is that setting, that storyline that we've created here. Oh yeah, so as you can see here, so yeah, this is halfway into a conversation, so there was a purge at some point because this was not the beginning of the conversation. I think this was the number one channel I had to purge at least 3 times, and each time I purged like if we consider that one scroll, it would be 10 of those. And I had to do that like 3 times just because it was just line after line of just conversation, which is kind of unfortunate. I do, now that I'm looking back on it, I wish I would have like kept a lot of that. But at the same time, it's not like I'm gonna really do anything other than reread it and be like, oh, I remember that happening. But it's one of the things that I try not to worry too much about. D&D is like, I'm good with consistency. but sometimes you forget things. Players are going to forget things. You're going to forget things as a DM. Don't beat yourself up over it. It's make the best notes you can, learn from it, and just, pivot. I mean, if you don't remember a certain detail, just pivot off of it and figure out how best to make it work until you either remember it, find the note, or just go on with it. I mean, if you don't remember, no one else remembers. What does it matter at that point? As long as it's still balanced, as long as it still makes sense. I mean, yes, there are some things you don't want to forget, and I've learned the hard way that there are some things you just have to document. But at the end of the day, a good conversation, if it's gone, hey, it was good at the time, and we have to remember that at the end of the day, D&D is great, especially when you can have these long plots and these long games. But at the end of the day, D&D is for that moment. It's for that gaming session, and as long as you all had fun, what you pull away from it isn't as important as what you got out of it in the moment. So kind of say la vie kind of moment. But yeah, this was a very, very big, as you can see here, a lot of people came into RP and talk about everything. We did get someone who wanted to do the bulletin board, so he actually already made his roll. He mentioned that he wanted to do it, make the roll. He had a bulletin board, 55, and so he got 2 items catch his eye on the bulletin board. So based off of that, looked at my charts, and then he was able to do a small water bandit or a small pack of wolves. So basically, go fight a bunch of wolves or go be creative and try to stop water bandits from hassling your trading vessels. And that, again, was because he had a perception of 5, and he was trying to, figure out what was needed. Of course, these ones caught his eye. I mean, there was obviously a hunting one, but a water option, someone saying, hey, we actually have something in the water, is obviously going to be the thing that number 1 catches his eye. And then and that's about it. So, and then he also said, so he did the bulletin board and he wanted to do lore. So he actually did both of these in the same thing. He said, hey, I'm going to read the bulletin board, but while I'm reading the bulletin board, I'm going to roll for that lore option, which is local lore, and I'm just going to listen in while I'm reading. And so he was given both options. He was given 2 items caught his eye on the bulletin board, and then you overhear conversations about work and politics and local gossip, but no new information was obtained, and that's because he rolled a 5. So obviously it wasn't good enough for him to get anything, so basically that's all he got was no new information. So, he's doing just fine. And then giving him more information. So based on what I had designed, the water bandit job was a minimum of 2 players, and the wolf job was a minimum of 3, based on the fact that I knew the wolf was going to be mainly specifically combat. So I kind of knew what was going to be necessary there. And then when it came to the water bandit job, it could have turned into a really big combat, but knowing that Darnus was going to be on the team and he could just go underwater and breathe underwater, it gave them an extreme advantage. So that automatically, he wasn't going to be able to do it by himself. Like, in the worst case scenario, he would need at least someone else. But at the same time, you could be very, very creative with this one, because it was just finding out who was harassing them and stopping them any way they wanted. And he had a really interesting idea where, he wanted to go basically find their boats and then just drill holes at the bottom of their boats and sink them. But yeah, so I did things like that to where I just let them know, hey, if you were online and you want to do this particular job, 2-player minimum, meaning you and 1 other person. So it doesn't mean the whole party of 7, just means that you need, and I did that because I knew what the treasures were and the XP were going to be if you did it by yourself. And it was just one of those things where I also knew the difficulty level. So it was that balance of, I didn't want everyone to I mean, there's other things you can do by yourself, but if you want to do something like that, it usually required at least 1 other person. And then, yeah, so once, he was asking about that, another character popped up and someone say wolf job, like, hey, I want to go fight some wolves, because again, in character, that's all they wanted to do. But I did really like, that these ideas that they, watching someone else type in one of these chats did spur other players to log in and be like, oh, well, I was just passing by and I saw you. And I loved that. It was just, it's one thing to have everyone there gaming and RPing, but when you have it like this, to where you could just be on break at work or just get off work or just get home and then open your phone or log in and you see something happening and it just spawns you to just talk for a few minutes. It's so much more freeing, because for a lot of us who really like playing D&D but don't necessarily want to play 6 straight hours of D&D only once a month, this was just a really fun way because you could just pop in and be like, oh, who's he talking to? And if you didn't care, you didn't care. But if you did, you could just hop in the conversation and just be like, I live here too. So of course I was just walking by. And it was just so much fun because you got so much of this stuff where it took a lot of load off me, because when they're RPing together, I just have to pay attention. I just have to know what they're talking about and make sure that I keep up with their general narrative, but I don't have to be the one to constantly come up with all the content. So it's great. It's a great way to do it, and it's harder to mitigate in person. I will admit that. It is so much harder to mitigate everybody's like side tangents and conversations and all of the stuff they're talking about in person, especially because it detracts from you actually doing your due diligence as a DM to keep the game going. But that's not necessarily a bad thing in this context, because it allowed everybody to keep up and at their own pace because there was no time limit. A lot of RP here, and so this was the last one. And then, oh yeah, so they talked about it. They want to do that one. I said put the team together, and then we'll post in game chat when they're ready. So that was just a way to basically say, hey, post in game chat, ping me, and then we'll throw that one together. So that was the mass haul, mostly just for RP and to generate side quests. As I said, it's out of all of the activities, this was the more top level one. This one was more like gameplay driven and RP driven. The rest of them you're going to see operate slightly differently. They are still all RP driven, but they are definitely more driven towards much more driven towards the individual character development and not so much the overall development with the settlement. This is going to be more one-on-one stuff and more individual things to do and commands to do. So let's start with the pit. So I told y'all in episode 3 or 4, part 2 or 3. This is part 4. I told y'all in part 2 or 3 when we were going over the NPCs. I told y'all to make note of how NPCs are named in this particular setting, because as we were going through here, you have like Truvis, he's the general store owner, and then you have Gerald, who is the weapon store, and then Tesna and Halbert, and then suddenly you have Travana the keeper, you have Jezzeret the counter, Milta the bloodstopper, you have Torlok the blessed, and then you have just Keltor, and then Alkanon the hunter. So there was a reason for this. Those that actually had the names, I did mention that we were going to get into that later, and that's right now. So the pit. The pit was one of my favorite things to design because of just all of the ways that it worked and all of the things that the players could do with it. So let's get right into it. The pit. Pit fighting is a trademark of Orc Society, includes boxing, wrestling, gladiatorial fights, and other tests of might. The pit is where young and aging orcs go to build, maintain, reclaim, or destroy their reputations. Glory is for those who hold the title of pit boss. So again, just right out the gate, just trying to just kind of like jazz this up, because again, I really wanted each of these areas to really embody what this whole was about. So this was just kind of, this was definitely supposed to be more of an announcer voice, but this was definitely really to just catch their attention right out the gate. And I really liked that description, just to kind of, really drive it home. Everybody comes here, young, old, famous, infamous. Everybody comes here to build a reputation, to maintain it, to reclaim a lost one, or just destroy it. And it is true. It's not just talk. We'll talk about that, but yes, all of those things can happen. So this activity is performed over 1 week. So that right there is our first indication of development time. So in order to do this activity, you must have 1 week worth of development time. Now again, that doesn't necessarily mean, I have PTO, I can walk away from the settlement and not do my duties. It kind of is, because it is over a week, but it's not like you're there 24 hours a day and you can't leave for 7 days straight. But the idea is that the pit is something that you have to dedicate to. So through gaming, in between episodes, in between campaigns, in between when you're doing all your other stuff, you essentially, over time, you put your other responsibilities to the side and went here and did this, and you progressed through this using that development time. So again, development time was both an in and out of game concept of time. It was partly a tracker and partly a real, I'm actually using my in-game time for this. Kind of like, hey, I'm going to read this book. You have to spend an hour a day reading the book. That would be like development time. I spend an hour today because I only have so many hours to allocate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, I read every single day for 1 hour, or I read all of it in one day because I said, hey, I want to read this book. I'm going to spend 10 development hours to read the book. That doesn't mean I sat down for 10 hours and read the book. It just means that, hey, I've had this development time, aka free time, aka time off. I'm going to say I have and am allotting it towards something. And some things could have been right out the gate, like, in a sense retrofitted, but other things you'll see that we go through take time, and you actually have to put development time over time. But yeah, just I feel like development time, it was always hard to explain to some people right out the gate. But once you start using it, it never really comes up in terms of, it doesn't stop you. Like if you were going to do the pit, it doesn't stop you from going on with the campaign. But the idea is you had to accumulate it to justify that you had free time. So, it will take 1 week of development time. The character must complete in a series of challenges against opponents. The opponent difficulty is determined at random based on the quality of opponents the character runs into. Each match challenges the opponent to display their talent in strength, dexterity, and constitution. After facing an opponent, consult the table. So essentially, with the pit, it's a command that they ran, and it was an automatic program that took into account their character sheet, and it basically ran them through 3 rounds, a round testing their strength, a round testing their dexterity, and a round testing their constitution. And we can get into that in a little bit about exactly how that worked. But yeah, they did the command, and it basically ran them through 3 rounds, three rolls against their numbers in these categories, and then this is how the table would have it. So out of all of the fights, it's not really 3 fights, it's over a week. So the idea is that each day they would be challenged over and over, but mechanically it's just a bot or a command that rolled for strength, dex, and constitution challenges. So if all 3 lost, if they had 0 successes, all fights, all challenges lost, nothing is earned, and you lose 1 bracket and you move down 1 rung. We'll get into what those mean in just a little bit. If you get 1 success of the 3, if one of the successes, you'll win 150 gold. If you get 2 successes, you will win 500 gold. And if you get all 3 successes, so when you do the command, if all 3 succeed, you will win 1,000 gold, and you will win 100 gold per rung below you, and move up 1 rung and 1 bracket. We'll get into what those mean, but the idea is that if you can win, you start to go up the ranks, and that's very, very important. So, to enter the pit, you must first create a counter. Enter the following command to set your counter to 0. And then this is how the bot works. So CC create, and then pit bracket, which was just the thing. And then I already had the background command. So once you said that, it already knew what it's counting. And then it gave you, and then you just said 0 to say, set me to 0. And then in the future, my command to do this would automatically update this counter. So you create the counter, and then the command will automatically update it for you. And once you are complete and ready to begin, enter the command pit fight. So here's how this works. The roster. For glory and honor, orcs flock to the pit to earn their own title. Only the best of the best can claim the ultimate title of pit boss. Upon successfully defeating all 3 opponents, a character may decide to challenge the next rung above them. The first being rung 10 and the beginning of the climb. Defeating your opponent will knock them down 1 rung, and you will advance, claiming the new position as your own. And we'll, again, kind of already seeing that probably here, but we'll get into that just in a second here. But again, this is an active thing that was designed for the characters to actually go through. So this was not part of the story. They didn't have to do this, but this was something that if they wanted to do this on the side, this is actively, they would change this. This is not something that is just here to be plastered. It would actively move and shift as they went through these. If you were able to make it to rung 5, you are granted the ability to choose a name, and you shall be known throughout the settlement. Wear this as you would a badge of honor. So that right there is why, when I pointed out before, the NPCs is so important, is that right there distinguishes an NPC. All of the NPCs who have that the name, like Travana the Keeper, all of that means that all of them went through the pit and at least made it to level 5. At least decided to come to level 5 before they either decided that they're done, or they got knocked down all the rungs. But that's where it is kind of important in the settlement and in the story and in the lore why people had those types of titles. Those titles indicated what they've done to earn it, which was they went through this. And so that's why not everyone had one. That's why I really wanted to make sure that not every higher up NPC was able to do this. But it's also why I have things like, you have Keltor. He doesn't have one. Quinn doesn't have one, but Jezerit does. So that means that Jezerit, the gnome, was able to at least get to level 5 in the pit. So I again, really great, lore setting, world building, and little things that you can put into the background, because until someone came in here and read what the pit was all about, they met all these NPCs and saw all these names, and then once they would finally put it together, they would be like, oh, you've done this. Oh, and that's just, I find that that's a good way to build some NPCs. It's one thing to establish an NPC and their importance right out the gate, but it's another to have the characters accidentally stumble upon that kind of information and just watch it dawn on them, like, oh, kind of, just again, real world stuff, like when you meet your, the CEO of your company for the first time, you don't know it's them. Kind of just one of those things where, you don't have to care about it, but some people do, and I like that kind of, not every character I didn't walk everyone through these. I said, hey, welcome to the Discord. Here's all the things you can do. Gave him a brief rundown of how things worked and asked me questions. So this was really kind of one of those Easter eggs. It was really one of those Easter eggs for them to find. It was something for them to put together themselves and realize, oh, you have a title because of this. Okay, cool. And that was really what that was all about. So fighters' names. So here are the 10 rungs. So at the top, you have Warnak the Defiler. He is the current pit boss, and he is the advisor to the chieftain. And I think that we actually have a picture of Warnak. Come here. Do we have... That's Mortok the Chieftain. Thought I had him in here. I have him down here. Oh, here we go. So here's so we do have the champions down here. So let me go through the names and then we'll go through the titles. So we have Worknar the Defiler. He is the current pit boss and advisor to the chieftain. So yes, as you go through the pit, not only do you get to the point where you have your naming rights, but it also does come with responsibilities. Now, this is something I actually modeled off of a real life situation that I was part of. So I used to, or kind of still do, haven't in a while, but I'm part of a group called the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism. And as part of that, one of the things that we do is we have essentially leadership that's we're part of a nonprofit, but it's also essentially like in-game leadership, like role-play leadership, where we actually have like a kingdom, principalities, we actually have royalty, people that basically take on those positions. And one of the things I really like about how the thing works is that's not just a position just to say, hey, I'm the king, I can walk around and do things, but it also, the position doesn't come with a role-play option, but it actually is a position in the broader sense. Like, you actually are responsible to do things. You're responsible to maintain and organize certain things. You're responsible to even for certain items. It's actually part of like essentially a changing of hands thing, to where it's like, hey, we have a bunch of stuff that you need to hold on to as king. So physically, please hold on to this. There's like a trailer that they have to have because it has all of their kingdom stuff, like their thrones, their where they sleep and all of that stuff. But that's because it was provided by the community. But they also have out of game responsibilities, not just responsibilities there. I mean, they do have to show up to so many things, but they do have to do admin work. They have to help the entire thing alone. They can't just show up, get drunk, and act like a king, king, and just walk around. They actually have real life stuff, and that's kind of where I wanted to do this, because the way that you do that in the SCA is you don't just get to like volunteer. You don't just say, "Hey, I want to do that job. I'm willing to." You have to earn it, and the way we earn it is in tournaments. So in the SCA, there are actual tournaments, fighting tournaments, people in actual armor with modified weapons, and it is full contact, full like just not like just play tapping. That's actually people break bones in these fights. But there is a full-blown tournament, and the winner of the tournament gets to be crowned king. And essentially, so you have to earn this position, but it's not just a title and a fancy thing to go dress up as. It's actually admin work. It's real work. And that's kind of what I actually designed this to be for, because if you're getting this far into the pit and you're proving yourself as the best, you're obviously not just going to get to sit around. You have to pull your weight now, because if you are the best, you need to do, the settlement needs that. So the idea is that it doesn't just come with a title, but it also does come with, responsibilities. So, Worknar the Defiler, he's the advisor to the chieftain. So when the chieftain needs to, have issues with, the people, a lot of people respect Worknar. And so he's going to have a good sway, because his mindset is going to, hopefully be understood of the people, but he's also not necessarily like, he's also like one of the highest fighters. So if it's the decision of, hey, I'm going to go meet this other chieftain, come with me. And then at the end of it, it's like, hey, what was your vibe? What did you think of him? And this guy, having been great in battle, will tell him whether or not he's going to be an easy target, whether or not they should attack, whether or not he's going to attack himself, whether or not they're already expecting it. Like, the idea is that because he's in the pit and because he's constantly watching battle and people striving to literally gain, like, some people are fighting for their life in the pit because that's all that matters to them. So he has insight that a lot of people don't have. And that's the idea, is that he'll be that advisor because, he's steeped in this culture, and the chieftain needs to understand that. So next you have Monrak, the Decapitator. His title is Bloodmonger, and he is the war general. So when it is time for the settlement to actually go to war, not just a raid, but an actual war, he is called upon to lead everybody. Essentially, Worknar would tell the chieftain when to go to war, and then Monrak would lead the war. Thisnal, the Castrator, fighter elite and war leader. So once the war general takes everyone out there, war leader basically takes those orders and more or less just coordinates everybody. You have Strom the Forgotten, the Gilded Fighter, and they are a war scout. So you have, previously I mentioned that you can get into two different categories. You can become a scout or a raider. And essentially that just kind of opens up different, for the players, that really just meant they opened up different dialogue options with different NPCs. So, again, this player could really only talk to the scout leader, and the other one can really only talk to the raid leader, but that just gave different dialogue options, gave them different reasons to talk to different people, and for the whole party to have reasons to talk to different people. But bigger on that, scouts went out to find things for the raiders to go take or negotiate. Raiding didn't always mean go rape and pillage. It also just meant like go make first contact. The scouts found, the raiders got. That's basically what it is. So Strom the Forgotten, the Gilded Fighter, is the war scout. So when essentially Worknar tells the chieftain that war may be inevitable, and everyone else starts to prepare to get all the troops ready, the true first person on the battlefield, the chosen battlefield, is Strom. Strom's basically the one who essentially goes out and is basically recon. So they go out, find the essential battlefield, the desired battlefield. They find backups. They're the ones who are supposed to find like any ways in or out that could be in an ambush. They can go and actually scout. They'll take a very privatized scout team and go scout the actual enemy's compound and wherever they're going to go. They'll scout trade routes for months to find out where to cut them off. So yeah, War Scout is kind of a big deal. But once you've done the War Scout for a while and you can go up to that, then you'll be the War Leader, which you're done looking for people. Now you're here to fuck their world up. And then at 5th, the current and most recent named fighter in the entire settlement is Snellick, the Gouger. And title is just basically naming rights. So level 5 is just getting the title. You don't get any special position. You are just a named fighter. So essentially, it's the first true step in prestige in the entire settlement. And then you have everybody else. Basically, as you can see here, you just have people, just names, and none of them are the players because no one's actually gone that far. And then, so these are the rungs. The rungs are essentially how you progress through, and you can always, once you've made named fighter, after a certain amount of time, because you do have to accept challenges for a certain amount of time while you hold the rung, but after a certain amount of time, or at least once you've gotten to named fighter, you are allowed to give up without a fight. You can actually forego your rung placement and essentially step away. Now that'll come with some penalties. If you ever want to come back and regain, you actually have to start from the bottom. You don't lose your naming rights, so you'll come back in with your naming rights, but you don't get to come back in at rung 5. You have to start at the bottom again. But yeah, you can always walk away. So, if Strom was the war scout, doesn't want to give up to Snellick, who would obviously be a better fighter one day and wants to be the war scout, and Strom doesn't want to be doesn't want to give up war scout, but doesn't want to be war leader, Strom can step down. Now, granted, there are varying situations. If Snellick does, work out and is a crap war scout, there are discussions about prior people taking over, like Strom could continue to be the war scout, but the idea is that they want people who are freshly through the fighter's pit on the front lines because they've been the ones to prove themselves most recently. So now brackets and rungs are a little bit different. Rungs are essentially where you are on the ladder, hence the rungs. Brackets are essentially the idea of where you are in difficulty. So I set up here, if anyone was questioning this before, I didn't mention it because I didn't want to get too side tangent. But the opponent difficulty is determined at random based on the quality of opponents the character runs into. So that wasn't really a good way to describe this, but essentially your bracket determines the difficulty. So your rung is essentially where you are in the whole process, but your bracket matters in terms of difficulty. So the higher the bracket you are, the coding, when you do pit fight, the code actually takes your bracket into account and bumps up the difficulty and makes it harder for you to win each fight. So hence, the more you win, the harder things get, and it fluctuates. But it also is random, so it doesn't. So it basically means that it's going to be harder, but not necessarily. It's kind of like a D6 roll. It could be a D6 harder, but that means it can only be 1 harder, not always 6 harder. But when you first start out, with bracket of 0, you're a child. Once you get a couple fights in and you get 2 counters, you're entry level in all of this. So, and this is kind of how people view you, is when you come into the thing and people look at you, you're like, what are you? Are you on the rung? No. What bracket are you? Your entry bracket? You're not even on my level. Get out of here. And then once you get a couple more, you get intermediate. And then once you've really established yourself, had about 5 or 6 wins, you become a fighter. Now remember, this is 5 or 6 in order to get these. Remember, if you lose everything, you lose a bracket and lose a rung, and you have to get all 3 successes to go up a rung and up a bracket. I thought about having 2 successes go up a bracket, and I think I still would nowadays probably mean 2 successes goes up 1 bracket, because that still means that on average things should get more difficult, because there's really no other ways to lose brackets. But the idea is it's also supposed to just really come into play when you're trying to get into the rungs. This really starts to matter because you really want to be up here in order to be on the rungs. You should be a master. But yeah, after intermediate, you eventually become a fighter, and then eventually your bracket becomes battle. I don't know why I had battle on there. I think I just couldn't figure out anything else, and I think I wanted to come something bigger, but I didn't want a bunch of 2 different names. But then you have master, and then you have savage. I think just battle bracket, I think, may have just been a cool concept, but it just, the fighter bracket, the battle bracket, the master bracket, the savage bracket. But yeah, the idea was, again, this is an encounter that will indicate how difficult each fight will be, or each test will be. And then extended training. So all of these activities typically had an extended training attached to them. These were additional things, just another layer of things you can do, more specific to what we talked about before, which was connections. So like we talked about, Venla is an apprentice to Melta right now, and they get a 50% discount. This is why, because of these extended trainings or extended options. They're just things that, again, develop your character in different ways. This is obviously more geared towards the settlement and your role in the settlement. This is more geared towards like one-on-one stuff. So extended training requires 5 weeks of development time. Spending 5 weeks with the best fighters learning new techniques and tactics. So if you have 5 weeks of development time and you throw them all into this is what happens. At the end of your training, you may choose one of the 3 following effects. A, permanently increase strength, dex, or stamina by 1 point. So 5 development weeks, and you can increase one of those stat points by a point. And it's unlimited. You can up to 20, obviously. So if you just keep racking in development time and you just keep pumping this, you can just keep pumping any of those stats that you want. That is something that normally you wouldn't be able to get from the game at any like at a progress that is your own. And that's the cool thing I liked about the pit is people could just sit there, and as long as you had the ability to just run it, you could just run it in the background and eventually get your own stats. So that was one option. Or B, gain 2 weapon proficiencies in a known weapon. In a single known weapon, yeah. So essentially being able to just add to your repertoire of things that you can do, or gain one weapon proficiency to learn a new weapon. I'm trying to remember how I meant that, because I know that is more geared towards like my 2nd edition gameplay. So I wonder if I didn't really fix that, because I don't think anybody was interested in the extended training with this one. That one does sound like that's more of a layover, because like I don't know if 5th edition really does proficiency points. I think proficiency points are more of an old school concept. So I'm not really sure. I don't remember. No one ever did this, so I don't remember if this was just a placeholder. But the idea was spend 5 weeks here, and you could do something to essentially become a better fighter. So you would either increase your stats, increase your ability in a weapon, or be able to do more with a particular weapon. That was that idea. And then additionally, every time you do extended training, you have a stacking 10% chance. So the first time you do it, you have a 10% chance. The second time you do it, you have a 20% chance. The third time you do it, you have a 30% chance. And it just keeps going up. To gain the attention of one of the top 5 fighters on the leaderboard to be their squire. So essentially, if one of these top 5 warriors, if you do development time and you have a 10% chance stacking each time, one of them may see you and go, hey, I see you putting in the work here. I'll bring you under my wing. And essentially that is where you would gain a connection and you would get bonuses. Maybe you can bring them on a mission. Maybe you could get, stuff from them or advice, or they would just be unlocked as an NPC that'll talk to you. But the idea is that you gain favor by doing this. So let's look at who's currently on the leaderboard. So we have your champions. We have Worknor the Defiler. He is the current pit boss and advisor to the chieftain. I loved this picture. Just looks so intimidating. Definitely someone that you don't want to see on the other end of that pit. And then you have Monrak the Decimator, Bloodmonger and War General. And then again, just with the skulls of some of his enemies. Thisnal the Castrator, Fighter Elite and War Leader. Just badass. I love the little spurt of blood on the knuckles and her mouth. Just little war paint on the face. Just absolute great. I don't even remember where I got these pictures from, but all of these just brought out these characters so much. And then you have Strom the Forgotten. This one just gave me I really liked the worn aspect, just the idea of just someone who definitely looks like society has put them to the wayside, but they're regaining. So that he's more of a representative of reclaiming your glory through this process. All right, where are we at? Okay, 145. All right, let's we can get through at least one or two more. I'm probably gonna have to finish this next week on Thursday, but let's get through a couple more because this was pretty much this wasn't too bad. This was one of the mass hall was one with the longest description. The rest of these are pretty quick, but yeah, this was the pit. This was one of my favorites to design just because of this whole roster concept, the brackets, how to make the programming work for pit fight. Was really fun. In fact, let's go over here to in game. Let's have some fun. I want to go to roles and commands, and let's do pit fight. Let's see. Do I have a character set? Hey, I still know my commands, guys. Look at that. Active character changed to Noel. So, actually, if you want to know who my character is, how do I do that? No, how do I... There's a way that you can, like, bring up all of your character stats, and I've just totally forgot how to bring up... Oh, is it just sheet? It might just be the sheet command. Hey, look at that. So here's my pretty much my basic stats. So I have like my picture if I needed it. So my dashing rogue. I have proficiency bonus. I have my AC. I'm pretty low on hit points for some reason. I have my dexterities, my skills, my attacks. Oh, this is new. Guys, this is new. This has never been here before. So before you actually had to do coin command. No? Hang on. What happened? Did they change how money works? Coins. Never mind. Hang on. See? So this is how we... Oh, they've changed. Okay, so this command doesn't work anymore. I'm so out of date. So before you had a whole different command to do coins and it stacked all your stuff. Now you can see here that they built it into your character sheet. So you can actually like add your coins here. That's fascinating. I am so out of date here. But yeah. So here's my attacks. I can do my attack. I have a rapier and a short bow. That's my character. I could have sworn... Yeah, I don't even remember, like, all of the ways that you can do, like, the full character pull up. But you can usually get more details. Like this one, you can get, you know, all of your side stats. If you have spells, if you have any kind of counters, you can usually see... you can usually get a better description of your character. But yeah, let's do pit fight real quick. That's what I came in here for. Let's do pit fight and see how Noel does. And you guys can see what this did. So this is what happens. If someone wanted to do this actual pit fight, right? So they've come in here, they're reading this. They're like, hey, I want to do this. So once they have the counter set, they go in and I can actually see here. Let's see what my, my actual counters are. Ah, here we go. Custom counters. So, Relentless Endurance, Experience, Ammo, Res, Current. I don't... I may not have it. I may not be able to do Pit Fight. Let's see. Get CC is not defined. Right. So, I do not have it. So, let's follow my own rules, guys. I need to type in that. So, we go over here. I go there. Boom. Now I have a current counter. Now I am a... what do we call it? I'm already forgotten. I'm a child, guys. Okay, we are a child. We are about to do pit fight. So here's how this works. I go into pit fight. What do you mean get CC is not defined? I'm mad, guys. I'm mad. Let's see what happened here. I'm reading through the coding now. So they've changed the coding. So get CC is no longer the probably no longer the syntax. So my code probably doesn't work anymore because this was a custom built code. Actually, I could have shown you guys the actual code if you wanted, if anyone actually cares. So this is pit fight code. This is what I ended up learning and just being able to write out just whenever we wanted to build something. So the idea was that you do the alias pit fight and embed the title of the pit, the description, it came out, and then what it would do is it would check your bracket league, and it would be child if get CC pit bracket is less than 0, else entry if it was less than 3. So basically just basic coding to tell which to display. And then here you go, challenge number 1, strength. So here's how the coding would work. This would just tell you all of that. So it would do 3 challenges, strength, dexterity, and constitution. So the first challenge, the opponent, it's a versus roll. So what it does is it takes a 1d20. So they roll. So the opponent will roll a 1d20 minus the character's level, but it will add the CC bracket. So this was a way to balance out the difficulty. So the higher the level you are, yeah, minus level. That's interesting. So if you got, it would get, yeah. So here's the logic behind that. You roll. It's basically, if you look at here, so opponent will roll a d20 and you will roll a d20. So these are essentially, this is how the challenge works, is it's a d20 roll, you against the NPC. The caveat is, how did I balance this to make it automated? Because it would have just been easier to say, hey, roll a d20, I roll a d20, whoever wins, you win that challenge. But I wanted it to not only be automated, but I wanted it to be balanced based off character progression. So the d20 flat roll is basically the idea behind the opponent's skill / luck, right? It's just a d20 roll. How good is that opponent going to be today? Bam, flat d20 roll. But the character, because this is going to be based off of the player at any time they play, the higher the level of the player, the less difficult an opponent should be. So the flat d20 is purely based on the opponent's abilities. Then the minus the character's level is taken into account what level the character's at and how good they should be. Then it adds the pit bracket. So the pit bracket being how good you are. So that's that difficulty I was telling you about why it added the difficulty. So essentially, it's choosing an opponent. They get a random d20 roll. That's on them, because that's going to be that opponent's skill level that day. The level is to indicate how good you should be. So it's going to lower that roll to be more adequate for you. But then it's going to increase based on how good you are. You are going to roll a d20, and you're going to add your strength mod. This is why it's a strength challenge. That's it. You get a d20 plus your strength mod, and you're fighting against a d20 minus your level, but plus your current pit bracket. And each pit bracket, as you saw, has 2 numbers each. So it was like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So challenge 2, dexterity, basically the same thing. So the opponent rolls a d20 plus 5 minus your level, but plus your current bracket, and you get a d20 plus your dexterity mod. That's it. I think with the dexterity plus 5, I think that was just to make this one increasingly more difficult. Like the strength, and then dexterity and constitution would just be increasingly more difficult. And then same thing with constitution. It's a d20 plus 10 this time, minus your level plus the bracket, and you get a d20 plus your constitution modifier. And then you get a win, loss, or tie. And that's pretty much it. And this is all just basically how to modify the bracket and your rung system and everything. So let's see if I can find someone who actually did it, because it looked a lot better when someone had actually oh yeah, no, it's the pit, not pit fight. If I do the pit, here we go. So this is what it looked like when you actually rolled the pit and wanted to do the pit. this is what it would look like for people. So Shaddai, they wanted to do the pit. So bracket league is entry. So it popped up with this. You're doing the pit. It gave you your bracket league, which was entry, which would dictate your skill or the challenge rating. Challenge, strength. So opponent. So we just went over how the rules worked. So the opponent rolled a 20 minus Shaddai's level, which was 4. So rolled a d20 minus 4, but then added her entry level, which I think is like a 2 or a 3. So depending on what they rolled, but Shaddai rolled a 12 plus her strength modifier, she won. With the dexterity, the opponent rolled a 5, she rolled a 3, she lost. And then with constitution, she lost. That's it. So 150 for one win, because that's how it works in the bracket system. She tried again, win, lose, lose, $150 for the win. She tried again, tie, win, lose. What does a tie count as a loss? No wins, but doesn't count against you. So 150 for the single win. And that's basically it. That's how the pit worked. And then if you got all 3, you would just go up in the bracket and the rung. This would automatically increase for you. And then in the rung, if you ever got through the rungs, if anyone ever got 3, I would come in here and then they would essentially, if the first person to get all 3 in the pit would then get a custom 1v1 combat session with Lemus. And I had a character sheet and everything, or a thing built out for all of these guys. So the idea would be we would hop into battle and they would just do a one-on-one combat with this character. And if they win, they took the place. And if they didn't, keep on going. And that's the pit. So that's how the pit worked. That's how pit fight worked. Pretty simple. Let's see. Let's go through the arena because it's kind of similar to the pit, and then we'll stop it there. It's going to be a good time to stop. So the arena is another opportunity. This was something that I wanted to design for the players to do, because sometimes you don't want to wait until you're in a like necessary combat or a game-changing combat to test some things out. And then a lot of times you don't want to do things that really aren't worth it. So I wanted to create a place to where it wasn't just about progression specifically for levels or for titles or anything. I wanted the players to also be able to play with each other and to play with different ideas without it being concerning about them losing stuff. So that's where the arena was born. The arena is essentially an opportunity for players to safely do combat sessions where they don't have to worry about losing their items, they don't have to worry about dying, and they can still somewhat progress, they can still level up, but essentially it's more geared for them testing out new techniques and new ways to work together, especially after they level up. This would be a place to come into and test out what feats they just learned. So an extension of the pit. The arena is an extension of the pit. So here in the arena, squads of 3 to 8, so minimum players online would have to be 3, but I'm technically a player. So that's the other thing too that people that I didn't mention before is whenever I gave them a player limit, when I said, hey, like when we were doing the mass hall before, and Darnas had 2 different things, and one was a minimum 2 players, another was a minimum of 3. I have a player in this setting. Noel is my player. That counts. If Darnas goes to Nell RP-wise and says, hey, man, I have a job, but I want one more person, because I told him DM-wise, you need 2 players. If in-game he says, hey, do you want to go? Guess what? That's 2 players. We can run that scenario. So when I said minimum 2, when I say minimum of 2, that's also indicating it can be a one-on-one. It can be just me and you. If it's 3 or more, that means that you can choose me, but you also need at least one other actual player. So I didn't mention that before. I kind of just glossed over it, but that's why with this one in the arena, squads of 3 to 8. So 3 meaning I can be in it, but then it needs to be one of the 2 players. So, they can't just pull just me. And that's, again, because I don't want to just be part of this. I don't want one player to benefit from this. This is something that all players would have to benefit from. Or not all players, some players. More than one player would have to benefit from. All right, so the arena is staged for 10 rounds. Each round completed... so for each round completed, each squad member still conscious, because it's an arena. For each round completed, each squad member still conscious earns 100 XP and 100 gold multiplied by the round number. Thus, round 5 grants 500 XP and 500 gold. Squads bank their earnings every 2 rounds. So at round 1, you guys earn 100 XP and 100 gold. At round 2, you get another 200 and another 200. So now you have 300 total. and it's banked, meaning if you fail round 3, you're still going to get your 300. If you get to but if you fail round 3, you don't you only get the 300 total that you've earned up so far. So you can squads bank the ranks every 2 rounds. You can leave any time between rounds and take what you have banked. Thus, if you win round 3 and fail round 4, you only get paid for round 1 and 2, which would be the total of 300 gold and 300 XP. So even though you beat round 3 and should have gotten another 300, you didn't bank, and if you leave or fail, you don't get it. So you have to you want to at least push yourself to that next benchmark. If you think you can handle it, because otherwise you're just going to lose the last round you won. So that's just one of those things that kind of just push people to not just come in 1 or 2, like 3 rounds and bounce. It really pushed them to, like, if you're going to keep going to the next benchmark. Let's see. If any squad member falls unconscious, they will receive half earnings for that round, and any round their squad completes thereafter, unless they are revived. So between rounds, if you go down in the round and your party doesn't pick you up, you'll get half earnings for that round. But if you stay unconscious during the next round and they win, you're still going to get half earnings. They have to res you or they have to bring you up for you to technically be considered in the round. And again, that's because this is an arena. So the idea is, the rules are you are part of the party, but if you're not participating, why would you get the full benefits? And then squad members will be granted a short rest after round 2, a long rest after round 5, and another long rest after round 8. So you get round 1 and 2, and then you get a short rest. So don't blow everything. Kind of just test the waters, get some of your health back. Maybe get like a low something low back, and then you have to go 2 more rounds to bank, and then you get round 5. So here's the psychology behind that. You get round 1, round 2. Now you're banking your 300. You get to round 4 at that point. Now you're banking. What is that? 600 and then another 4. So now you're banking 1,000 XP and 1,000 gold at round 4, right? You've banked it. You're good. You can leave right now. But if you go 1 more round, if you can survive round 4 and actually throw everything out. I mean, at this point, you can throw your magic out, because if you beat round 5, you get a long rest. And then you get everything reset. Now you only need 1 more round in order to bank. 1 more time. And then you're going to get 500 you're going to get 1,100 on top of your 1,000. So getting to round 6 automatically puts you at 2,100. So that's where I wanted to do that. And then if you can go, because once you get to round 6, you'll have it banked. And then 2 more rounds, get to round 8, bank it 1 more time, because you pushed it and you banked it 1 more time, you get another long rest. But you have 2 rounds now you have to survive. Then they're the hardest 2. But by this point, the idea is that now that you're 8 rounds in and you're at your second long rest, you guys should really have a good idea of what you're doing here. Kind of have a good rotation. And then complete the arena's 10 rounds for a special prize. Note, this is a combat-only activity. So this was also designed for when we just weren't wanting to deal with anything. RP will remain at a minimum unless specific to combat. So unless there's a reason to RP, the idea was this is combat training. This is us just running the code and just doing combat. Please keep delays between initiative, ping, and actions under 10 minutes. So this is, if we're starting this, we're all here, we're all in line, we're doing this. You don't have to be like on it. You get up to 10 minutes, but the idea is that if I'm running this, because the arena was really difficult. I mean, this was 10 rounds. I had all of them planned out. I had maps for them and everything, and it was just one of those, really needed to just make sure that we just ran through this. And then I had a map and everything else like that. We just ran through it. It was a lot of fun. We had a arena-specific chat, and again, it was just pure combat. So just kind of going through a random one, cast Entangle, rushes to the pit, and then blah, blah, blah. I attack with my rapier, and now I'll attack with the offhand scimitar, use savage attack. And that's all it was. It was just I loved this. As simple as it looks, it was so nice to have all of this stuff just done for you. I mean, being able to say, hey, his conjured animal attacks with tusk, boom, dead. And then initiative, orc, they were dead. And look at this. They were restrained, entangled for 9 rounds, and it tells you the parent reason was the entangled trap. Now this person's paralyzed because of hold person, 9 rounds, parent, hold person, so you know what to reference. This one, enemies have advantage on attacks against this target. So this is fairy fire. So someone earlier casted fairy fire, and it put the thing, so anytime this thing came up, everybody would see it and know, oh, okay. It just such a great way. When Siggy came in, gave health. It gave +1 temp HP health, so we already know that she had 1 HP. Their AC, their resistance. So we knew that they were raging at the time, so we knew that they had resistance. And look at that, rage for 7 more rounds. It gave us the damage bonus, the resistances. It was just, I loved the little snapshots. And then when it was another initiative round, look at that, everything just displayed perfectly. And Shaddai had this little breakdown because she had this ability to make a shadow version of herself because she was a shadow knight or something like that, I forget, but she was able to make a shadow version and pop back between it. So the program knew that and was able to break it out into 2 different entities, and she would be able to control them. And anything you weren't supposed to know about its health, I could look at its health in a back code, but publicly all the players couldn't see the health of my people, only the player's health. Oh yeah, so he attacks with a great sword of life stealing. So attacks, it rolls the hit, it rolls the damage, and then it breaks out the effect. It lets you know what the effect to the creature is. Again, really fun. The arena was a lot of fun too. It was just an easy way for people to just test out new fighting techniques, give them a little tiny bit of XP if they really wanted to push their way through it, but it also allowed them to be free with some of the stuff, because let's face it, there are a lot of ideas we have, and some players just aren't that willing to risk their character and risk the storyline progression. So this isn't one of those options to where you don't have to let them go ham on it, but they really can just kind of go wild. And instead of go ham on it is, and let them go ham in it, but without having to go ham on the idea that, oh, I'm just going to power level just through this. That wasn't really what the idea was. And as the DM, if you think that they're doing that, just throw them a really, really difficult challenge. Because again, as the lore states, or as the in-game lore states, everybody's joining the arena. That could have just been any battle. And that's where I just got to have a lot of fun too. The arena was a way for me to test like combat builds. It was a way for me to test new types of things. Because if I wanted to say, because I don't like CR, I don't like 5th edition CR. So for me to build a good combat session for my players, this was a way for me to test ideas before they ever saw them. If I had an idea, I could build a small group that was similar to something I wanted to work and see how difficult or how easy they went through it, so I could better plan combat and better plan encounters when they were in their actual campaign. Because a lot of the times you don't know what's going to work. You don't know if you should send 10 low levels or 3 high levels at them. So this way, in an area that you're not worried about TPKing them, and they're not worried about they're not worried about blowing all of their spells, because again, it's just the arena. Nothing's going to happen. They're not going to lose money. This literally was designed to be a no loss situation. They don't pay to go to the arena. They don't pay dev time. They don't pay gold. All they can gain is golden XP and experience. But it's also a way for me to test as well. And it made sense for the in-game lore, and no one really abused it. No one tried to come in here and become super powerful. But I will tell you one thing that they did do that I felt was clever, and not an abuse, but a perfect use of it. We did come back from a main plot point campaign. It was a dungeon delve. Everyone came back, got their gold, got their XP. Everyone leveled up but one character, and they were 100 XP off. They jumped into the arena. A couple combats later, they bounced out at, I think, level 4. I think they got to level, 3 or 4, and they were like, oh, I'm good. I got my XP. And then they were able to level up with everybody else. I was fine with that. That's exactly what something like this was for. It wasn't meant for them to power level, but it was meant for them to have on the side as a way for them to do those little tiny, like, oh, I'm just on the cusp of it, or hey, I just want to be able to test some new things out, and I want to do it with the party and against a bunch of people. So like I said, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it. Not as fun as building the pit, but it was still fun nonetheless. So I think I'm going to end it there. This was a lot of fun. I think that looking at these next ones, I will probably be able to finish up the Discord next week on Thursday. I will probably finish up reviewing this Discord, so we will have a part 5, and that part 5 will finish this up. And then I think what I'm going to do is after the weekend after that, I will do either a part 6 or just its own version of DM questions, because I really do want to go through that and talk about a lot of the stuff that I talked about with my players and how I go about DM questions. But I will go over the rest of these, and we'll get more into these side tangents. I think you guys are kind of getting the idea of where this Discord went, but I'm really happy with it. Actually, looking back on it, I'm not as critical as I thought I was going to be. I thought I would look back on this and I thought it would be kind of cringe. I honestly thought that being 3 years ago, I would start to be a little bit concerned with the ideas that I had, and it was my newest. I mean, this was my real deep dive into 5th edition. I knew 5th edition, I played 5th edition, but this was my acceptance of DMing in 5th edition for the first time. And I mean, it made it really easy because I didn't have to memorize a bunch of stuff. But I will say that I'm not as upset with what I did. I'm actually rather impressed that I was able to take myself out of, such a long-term 2nd edition player and having experience with the others and just knowing where I was firmly planted, but being able to throw all of this together, I'm actually really impressed with myself. And I don't think that I did. I think I was lenient. I knew I was lenient intentionally. I think there are definitely areas that I could have cleaned this up a little bit. But I'm not mad about that. I don't think that's actually a problem. I think that's just more of a personal critique. And I think that's where a lot of DMs also need to not be so hard on themselves. Decide what the difference between a actual I'm going to improve and get better and what is a personal technique or critique. Because it's one thing for me to say, hey, I learned in this how better to organize and how better to dialogue and RP, and that's what it really taught me. But at the end of the day, if yay, mind derailment. Love when that happens. At the end of the day, if I was too lenient and I gave the players too much gold at the end of their campaigns, if I made things too cheap, like Bag of Holdings, if I made magical items too accessible, it's one thing to say that that's a bad move, but at the end of the day, did anybody suffer for that? No. And that's really what it is a personal critique is saying, yeah, maybe for realism or maybe for this or that or challenge or for whatever reason, you can say, yeah, I could have done that better. But there's a difference between saying that, oh, I was so bad. Look at what I was able to do. I gave them I gave them a bag of holding for 500. How dumb was that? It's like, it wasn't dumb if everyone had fun. It wasn't dumb if it made sense at the time, or if it wasn't dumb if you just didn't know any better. It's just, why does that, I feel too many people, this is again, kind of going back to the original motto of this stream. The reason why we have the concept of thinking beyond the book, why beyond the book is kind of the motto of this stream, is because it's not just thinking beyond the rules. I feel like a lot of people hear beyond the, when we talk about, thinking beyond the book, as in, make your own stuff and don't play by the rules and just rule a cool and do all that. That's not what thinking beyond the book really means. It's things like this. It's saying that, hey, recognizing the fun of the story, like the fun of everybody, the characters, the players, you as the DM, that is the most important aspect of this. So it's one thing to say that, hey, I didn't know the rules and I could be a lot better at, combat management and time management and better managing my storyline and being better at telling scenery and being more engaging. Those are all good things that you can improve on, but don't look at the things that you wouldn't do now as things that were bad. It's just how they were. And again, is that a personal technique or critique that you're doing? I mean, you honestly saying that the game would have been better, or did, if you're looking back on it and saying, hey, someone didn't have fun because of this, that can be more of a, hey, I didn't do that very well. But, why are you beating yourself up over something like, oh, I charged too much for that or too little for this, or I gave them way too much gold early on. And they had fun and it progressed the story and you still had stories out of it and you're still gaming. At the end of the day, if they're coming back to gaming, are you really doing the wrong thing? I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for watching this. You can always catch me on my YouTube channel at Misfit Gamer Studios. All of the live streams are up there. I stream live every Monday and Thursday, just doing the D&D Discussions podcast. Next Monday, Kage will be here with me, where we will be reviewing another one of Cosmic's viewer submitted homebrews. We will be reviewing that as well as giving that a ranking. I will give that a ranking next time, and I'll try not to forget that. And then next Thursday, I will be finishing up this Discord so we can kind of talk about the other activities that I did, and then we'll be able to move on to other topics on Thursdays. And tune in this weekend. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow night. I am busy. I just remembered I am busy on Saturday. I don't know what part of the day I'm busy. So at some point, I will probably be on either tomorrow night or some point on Saturday. And most likely, if I don't get on either of those days, you can probably catch me Sunday, because I do want to hop on and do a stream of Shadows of a Doubt again. That was really fun. I played the tutorial again to revamp my my controls, because my controls were just really wonky, and I kept opening up the wrong menus and opening them up way too often. And I got a better idea of the controls and what to do. So check me out this weekend if you want to see that. Come back on Monday if you want to see me and Kage break down a new homebrew item. And come back next Thursday if you like this D&D content, or this the Discord content. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Have a good rest of your week. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you on Monday. Take care.